Hey, how's it going, guys? Matt Laidlaw here from Laidlaw's Harley-Davidson, sitting here with Mickey, and we're going to be doing a review on the 2025 model year Street Glide. So we're going to take the bike out, we're going to put it through its paces a little bit. You guys have seen me on the Street Glide a million times, so we have most of the shots with Mickey on the Street Glide today. And so let's talk real quick, about the Street Glide. Last year, if you guys watched my 24 model year video, I did a really in-depth video and a history on the Street Glide, where it came from and everything. And so if you guys want to see kind of a deep dive on the history of the Street Glide, I'm going to put a link in the upper right hand corner. I'm also going to put a link to a video that I did years ago talking about how the Street Glide completely changed the industry and really started a new path of styling for Harley. It's more of that factory bagger a look that a lot of manufacturers have gone and used, and that was inspired by a lot of the custom and aftermarket guys doing stuff on these Street Glides. As most changes come about, it usually comes about from the privateer, just the individuals at shows and things like that, trying to make their bikes stand out and look as cool as possible. So just real quick to recap a couple things. So the new body style on the Street Glide and the Road Glide was first introduced last year on the 24 model year. And we first got kind of a preview of that, the 23.5 model year for the CVO Street Glide and Road Glide. And that's technically the first time we saw this new body style. It was first introduced on the CVOs for half a year. And then that new body style, we'll call it the Gen 3 body style, trickled down to the Road Glide and the Street Glide. So the Street Glide first came out in the 2006 model year, and it has been in the lineup ever since then. It's basically your stripped down bagger with the Batwing fairing on it. I've had two Street Glides in my history. Mickey, you've had an Electra Glide. Was yours a classic or a standard? What Electra?
It was an ultra classic, yeah.
But you had the tour pack taken off. So
yeah, I basically turned it into a Street Glide.
Yeah. And it's interesting that Mickey did that, because that's what custom builders were doing for a long time, up until the 2006 model year, which I think is where Harley-Davidson got the idea for the Street Glide in the first place. So you're kind of one of the guys that customized your bike in a way that preceded the Street Glide. Yours was even like an 02 or something like that?
It was a 07, yeah.
07?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the Street Glide was already out, right? 06. But
yeah,
it was an 07, and it had all the bag rails and, the fender rails and the lights on the fenders and all that stuff, and I just stripped all that off.
Yeah. So and that's exactly what the Street Glide is all about. It's all about having that big bagger with the fairing and the radio and all that stuff, but chopping it down to kind of your minimalist, if you could say that, by taking off some of those bag rails and extra lights and the big funky seats, and they put bigger wheels on it to give it more of that custom bagger look.
Just a little less old man.
A little less old man. Yeah. And so that's kind of what gave way to the birth of the Street Glide, and Harley's kind of kept with that styling to up until today. It's they use a big 19-inch wheel in the front, 18-inch wheel in the rear. The Electric Glides, for a long time they were like 16s, 17-inch wheels. Yep. So
wagon wheels.
Wagon wheels, yeah. The other thing is when someone looks at buying a Street Glide, they're also looking at Road Glides as well. So those two bikes, it's probably the number 1 and 2 bikes that are shopped against each other, is the Road Glide and the Street Glide. Really what it comes down to is the fairing. Mickey and I did a video about 4 months ago where we do a really deep dive on the pros and the cons between the Street Glide and the Road Glide. And not so much the pros and cons as it is just a video explaining exactly what you get from both of those two different bikes, from a styling to a functionality standpoint. And so if you're looking to really figure out, okay, do I want the Street Glide or the Road Glide, you might want to take a look at that video. I'm going to link that in the upper right hand corner as well. So we're not going to spend too much time talking about Road Glide versus Street Glide, although it's probably going to come up because those bikes are so closely related. The other thing that I like to bring up in Street Glide videos as well is the shift in popularity we've seen, because I think it's an interesting topic. When the Street Glide first came out and it had that custom bagger styling that we've been talking about, the sales of the Street Glide far exceeded the Road Glide. People weren't even looking at the Road Glide anymore. That was like the old man touring bike kind of a vibe. And so everybody bought Street Glides. And then in the 2015 model year, when the Rushmore fairing came out on the Road Glide, then all of a sudden we saw the sales of the Road Glide, come and start to surpass that of the Street Glide. And that trend has kind of continued on to this day. We sell, what would you say, 11, 12 Road Glides for every Street Glide now?
Easily. You think King of the Baggers has anything to do with that?
For sure. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think there's definitely other forces that increase the popularity of the Road Glide.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think? Do you think it's a style thing? What do you think it is?
Yeah, I think it's a style thing. I think it's a trend thing. There's kind of a negative connotation when it comes to like influencers. You know, people would rather be called a content creator than an influencer, but we are influenced by things that we see, right? Everything that you consume, whether it's, you know, food or with your eyes, you're influenced by. And a lot of the content we see, I don't know if this is just my algorithm, but I see a lot of road glide stuff.
For sure,
I don't see a whole lot of street glide stuff at all. And then you put on top of that the King of the Bagger stuff, which I'm a huge fan of, and I watch every race and I love this, and I'm influenced by that, and I ended up buying a road glide.
Yeah, that's interesting because I almost wanted, when the new body style came out, I almost wanted to be the guy that was different and get the Street Glide. And I've always had a Street Glide for 10 years. I've had, you know, 2 Street Glides that I rode for about 5 years each. And so I wanted to keep the Street Glide. And then they came out with the CVO Road Glide ST. There was no CVO Street Glide ST. So I was like, you know what? I think this is the time where I go over to a Road Glide. And I love it, but I very well may switch back to the Street Glide. It's a different style, you know, and I'm not going to get into it because we went into it in such depth in a video we did 4 months ago. But I may be back to the Street Glide in the future. I still really like the Street Glides a lot. But this is a review video about the Street Glide. So let's talk new things on the Street Glide. And a lot of this is going to be a repeat from last year's video, the 24 model year video. But you know what? I say we take a close look at what the small little few things that have changed in the 25 model year, and maybe talk a little bit about how much better these are than the Rushmore, and maybe in some instances not as good as the Rushmore. I know there's some people that would argue that they like the analog gauges better, and maybe they feel like the fit and the finish of the Rushmore stuff is a little bit better. So
yeah, I think one more thing to the popularity thing is I think we as bikers like to rebel, and when the status quo becomes one thing, then people are going to start to like break away from that and be like, no, I don't want to do what everybody else is doing. Everybody has a road glide. And I think that shift is going to start happening again, and maybe we'll see a little bit more balance over the next couple of years, and then who knows, maybe the Street Glide will, you know, surpass the road glide again, and it'll kind of be a back and forth depending on what's popular.
Yeah, I think the takeaway there, guys, that Mickey is saying is if you want to be the rebellious guy that does something different, the Street Glide is the play.
Yeah, right now. Yeah,
right now. Yeah, it could change.
Who knows when you're watching this video? It might be 10 years from now, and you know it'll be the opposite way.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, when you pull up to a bike show and you see a million road glides, the one Street Glide, if done right, especially, is like, that's cool. You know, you're the guy that's a little bit different. Yeah. You know, it's more eye catching. You know.
I agree. Yeah. As far as rideability goes, riding it again today, because I haven't ridden that bike in maybe a couple months, I'm always impressed by that bike. You have one of these. You have one of these new M8s. I have the older generation M8. I have the Rushmore. Even like the throttle input, the throttle response, the smoothness of twisting the throttle is so much nicer than mine. Like I feel like mine has a little bit more, I don't know, maybe sponginess to it. And this is just really smooth, and the input in it, it's very exact, especially in sport mode. Like
I noticed you're in sport mode most all the time.
Yeah, right? I think by the time I got on the freeway, I was like, oh no, I needed to be in sport mode.
Yeah.
And yeah, but the bike runs really smooth. I also mentioned like it's a hot day today, and how much cooler the engine runs than my bike, it's night and day. Because my twin cam ran really hot, like it would cook my leg.
Yeah.
And then the M8s were much better, but it's still a lot of heat. Like when you stop at a stoplight, there's a lot of heat coming off the bike.
You got an engine between your legs, no matter which way you slice it.
Yeah, and even when we'd stop and pull over on trips, and you know, even just a quick picture, like we're always shutting our bikes off. And this bike, I feel like I could just let it run. You know, I think you've said that before. Is that like I don't feel as like stressed about the bike overheating,
just idling there. Yeah, and that was one of the things that I pointed out immediately, too, when I first rode them last year in the 24 model year. So they have that center-cooled head. So Harley-Davidson did change the heads in these bikes, and they introduced a new cooling system. They use water cooling now instead of oil cooling on these bikes. And so it's just more efficient cooling system. It cools the rear cylinder first, which is the one that radiates the most heat up on the rider, and then it circulates to the front cylinder. And so it's just more efficient cooling path for the coolant. And so that's something that very few people talk about, but it's kind of a big deal, especially when you live in like a hot climate like California, Arizona, whatever, Nevada. So let's talk real quick about the M8. So this has a 117 cubic inch engine, up from a 114 if you bought a special in the 23 model year. But if you bought an ST, the STs did come with a 117. However, this new version of the 117 with the center cooled head and everything, I think is still just a little bit more power, a little bit more horsepower and everything. So you have a better performing Milwaukee 8 engine at a 117 cubic inch. You have the center cooled head, so less heat radiating up on you. And you also have a new electrical architecture with these bikes that came out just last year. We'll call them the Gen 3 Street Glide and Road Glide. And with that, you get ride modes as well. So I was always kind of a skeptic when it came to ride modes prior to owning a bike with ride modes. The first bike I owned with the ride modes was the Pan America. And I feel like with the off-road capabilities and everything, it was more applicable on that bike than it is like a road bike. But I find myself switching ride modes all the time. You know, if I'm in the rain, I put on rain mode. If I'm splitting lanes in traffic, a lot of times I'll do road mode just so I don't have the super twitchiness of the throttle. Yeah. And if I'm on the freeway, I mean, on my CVO Road Glide ST, I put it on track mode just to have that like crazy power at 80 miles an hour still.
Get up and go, yeah.
Yeah. Of course, this Street Glide that we're talking about today doesn't have track mode, but it has sport mode. And sport mode is great if you're getting on it and riding aggressively. It's not just the throttle response, it's also your engine braking as well. When you let off that throttle, the decel engine braking is a lot more pronounced. And then you also change how your electronic aids interact with the bike as well. So they're more sensitive in rain mode than they are like in sport mode. In sport mode, everything is kind of desensitized. So your ABS, your traction control, it doesn't kick in until I guess you're really in some deep crap, I guess.
And also adjustable to some extent. Like you can make custom modes as well, to where you can adjust your engine braking. You can adjust these things. And so I usually tell customers when, you know, they're getting on these bikes for the first time and they're taking it home, I always recommend that they get used to the 3 stock modes first. Like mess around with these modes first and figure out, you know, what you like about them, what you don't like about them before you start building a custom mode. Because when you do build a custom mode, you're copying another mode, or that's the easiest way to do it. So, you know, I like everything about road mode, but I want that twitchy throttle from sport. So you can make a custom mode, you can copy from road mode, and then you can go in and you can adjust your engine braking and things like that. So they're adjustable to some extent, which is a lot more adjustable than what I have on my 23. I have RDRS on my bike, which has all the safety aids and, you know, the rider aids like hill assist and things like that. But
RDRS, as they used to call it, Reflex Defensive Rider System, which you still have on these new bikes. They don't call it that anymore.
Yeah, and you know, I have rain mode. That's about it.
As part of that new electrical system that was introduced on these bikes last year, you've also got all the LED lighting. So Harley-Davidson went to, you know, all the turn signals LED. You have the LED light strips in the front fairing for the front turn signals, and you got those light strips between the saddlebags and the rear fender back there for the tail lights. Kind of CVO-esque. I remember last year there was a little bit of criticism, even from our camp, that, hey, maybe that lighting should have been reserved for CVOs, but you know, it's very CVO-esque on the non-CVO bikes, but, you know, I think it looks great, and there's still plenty of things to differentiate the CVOs from the regular Street Glide or Road Glide, so it doesn't really bother me anymore. The lighting is pretty dang nice. I like the lights, the turn signals on the Street Glide. I think it's a cool design. It's definitely a lot more modern. I think that's probably one of the biggest elements where it's become subjective, and some people's opinion is, okay, now we're getting a little bit too futuristic. Plug on another video that we did. We just did a styling video, classic versus modern. And we kind of cover a little bit of the predicament Harley-Davidson is kind of always battling with, and that is how modern do you make these bikes? Because Harley-Davidson is such a classic brand, do you leave them very classic, or do you go into these modern waters a little bit more? It's a hard balance. I think what we kind of came to as far as conclusion goes is some bikes you can get away with more modern look, like a Street Glide and a Road Glide, and some bikes it's just a lot better if you keep them classic.
Yeah, I always go back and forth as well because I have an old bike, my FXR, and I put LED lighting on it because it performs better and I can see better with that headlight, you know? But at the same time, I'm like, well, it's not really true to this bike. These lights didn't exist when this bike came. So how much of a purist are you when it comes to that stuff? And, you know, we kind of talked about this with the Heritage as well, is that I like LED lighting on the Heritage, even though it's a very classically styled bike.
Classically styled LED lights too, I would argue.
Yeah, I think that's
LED.
A really good looking tail light too, the one that they have on there. I wouldn't have been mad if they had that on the baggers, you know, because, you know, 2 years ago, last year they had those on the Ultra. Yeah. Or that big box style, you know.
Yeah, that light ran for a really long time. They definitely, with this new body style, they've taken a big step in the direction of more modern. but you still have the classic silhouettes, classic lines. I mean, if overall the form factor hasn't changed. Let's talk a little bit about some other stuff too, like the suspension, for example. You just rode the bike quite a bit today. I've ridden them a million times. What did you think of the suspension right out of the box on these? Because that was kind of the Achilles heel of these road glides and street glides. People complained a lot about the factory suspension. They said, hey, I'm buying a touring bike and I'm uncomfortable on this touring bike. What did you think about the out-of-the-box suspension?
Yeah, I feel like that happened a lot with the Special specifically, because it had the shorter 12-inch shock. And, they were trying to achieve a certain look with that. And they nailed it because a lot of people loved the look of the Special, but then it would have the lower suspension. They'd put a tour pack on. They'd put their wife on the back. And then all of a sudden they're bottoming out because there's not a whole lot of travel with that shock. I got the ST, which had a 13-inch shock. I wasn't really mad at the rear suspension too much. Now I'm super spoiled. I have Wilbur's. Shout out to Stefan. And I love Wilbur's. So it really sets the bar high. I happened to ride my bike to work today, and then I jumped on that Street Glide. And it's not bad, dude.
Yeah.
It's not bad. That stock suspension is really, really nice. I don't have a whole lot of complaints after riding that Street Glide earlier today. And at all. Like maybe the bars are like slightly low, but outside of that, the bike is really enjoyable to ride. The power is amazing. I'm kind of coming around to the technology stuff. Like I pulled the infotainment system out of my road glide just because I'm not really into techie stuff like that. And these new screens are amazing, dude. Like they look really good. I don't know how I'm going to feel about that 5 years from now, because you look at a 5-year-old infotainment system from now, you look at 2020 and it's kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
Like technology moves really fast.
It does. Yeah. And technology gets dated very quickly. I'll comment real quick on the suspension before we move on to infotainment, but I'm glad you made that segue. Yeah, the suspension is definitely improved. I mean, they changed the technology and they did increase the length when you compare it to the Special. The Specials only had like 2.1 inches of travel in the 23 model year, and just introduced last year in the 24 model year, and certainly this year as well. They have 3 inches of travel. It's about 50% more. It may not sound like a lot, but an extra inch of travel on these bikes really accounts for a lot more comfort. The preload adjustment as well. You adjust the right-hand shock for your overall weight, like a base preload, and then on the left-hand side, you can adjust that preload for varying weights. If you throw a few extra pounds on the bike or something like that, you can adjust it on the fly real quick. And so doing that is important, by the way, guys. If you're buying one of these bikes, before you go out and spend $1,000 on suspension, you might want to adjust your preload properly and then make a decision after that, because there's a lot of people that buy these bikes and don't adjust the preload on these bikes, and they're doing themselves a really big disservice. But the suspension's been improved by a lot. I think there's going to be a lot less people that buy these bikes now that feel the need to spend the extra money to upgrade their suspension. So that was a huge win. Let's talk real quick on infotainment system. So going back to the people that had some criticism about these bikes initially, said like, wow, I have no more analog gauges. Now it's just this big computer screen. More things to go wrong, right?
Yeah.
At first, I got to admit, I was like, okay, we're taking one more step away from the classic nature of a Harley-Davidson. We no longer have an analog gauge. And the more I use it on my personal bike, and then when I go back to like a Rushmore Farad bike, I'm like, yeah, you know what? I do like the screen better. You can customize how you want the gauges to show up. There's a couple different modes. You got the sport mode, you got the road mode and touring mode. So it situates the gauges differently. I like the sport mode the best. And they're bigger. They're more vibrant. You can see them real easily. I will say it does take away a little bit from the customization bars and things like that. A lot of times, guys on road glides, for example, they moved their gauges up above the handlebars, and they can move their gauges all over the place. With this big infotainment system, this big 12.3 infotainment system that's beautiful, by the way, and the functionality is great. Apple CarPlay, Bluetooth, all that stuff. But you're a little bit more limited in how you can customize this stuff. And a guy like yourself that doesn't particularly like all the digital gadgets and everything, maybe it doesn't appeal to you. I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, it's starting to appeal to me more, like the more that I see it, because they've been around for, a couple of years now, and it's starting to grow on me. And that's kind of how it was when the fairings first came out, because you're so used to something and it's hard, and like we don't like change, And so the new fairings came out, and my first impression of them was I think they're ugly. And then
the new infotainment system.
Yeah, the new infotainment system, the new fairings, because I just want to hold on to what I know and what I like, right? And then as time goes on, like they kind of grown on me, and now I like the look of the new ones, and I like the new infotainment system. And I think the only thing about the Street Glide is the screen is much lower than on the Road Glide. So I found myself like I was actually tipping my head down, but I really love all the data that's on there. Like I was like, dang, it's hot, and I could just click through and I could see the ambient temperature. I could see my engine temperature. Like some of those things are really nice to have, especially if you're touring and you're hitting inclement weather and you're doing other things, and have a little bit more data on your bike. It's kind of nice to have the Apple CarPlay thing. Now that technology has advanced a little bit, so the screen is not only bigger, but you have a lot more functionality, and you also have a little bit lower barrier to entry for the auxiliary stuff. So previously we had the infotainment system. You had to buy the WIM system. You had to get all of this stuff installed. You had to go, buy some weird plug-in thing to get Apple CarPlay if you wanted to like hack the system and do Apple CarPlay. And now it's just plug and play, and you don't have to buy extra stuff to get more functionality than what we had on the previous generation.
Yeah, more and more people have those headsets too. Even if you don't have a fairing with an infotainment system, a lot of these Dyna guys will have a Cardo or Senna or whatever it may be, and then they just maybe they upgrade to a bagger, and it's like, okay, I already got the headset, and I just connect it, and you're good to go.
That's my argument for not having an infotainment system. Is that almost every single one of my helmets, I have a headset in there for GPS and for being able to answer the phone. That's really the only functionality that I want. So I already have one too,
Yeah. Yeah. And, I'll say too, like I've heard, cause I always try to look at things from both sides, and like I've heard some people that maybe aren't super tech savvy, and the infotainment system, they struggle a little bit with getting it to work. And, another plug for another video of mine, I did a tutorial on getting this new 12.3 inch Skyline infotainment system to work well, and how to pair your phone and pair your headset and everything to it. I'm going to put a link to that video in the upper right-hand corner as well. But it's worth spending the time in your garage or whatever to learn the infotainment system, because I'm telling you, once you learn it and you know how to navigate it well, it's a really, really good device. It works well. Like I'm constantly switching between Apple Maps, Google Maps, and switching between my music, and then going to the widgets like Mickey mentioned, checking my tire pressure, checking my engine temperature, all that stuff. I mean, if my engine gets, super, super hot, I'm going to want to know about it. I'm going to want to be careful, pull over or whatever. I mean, that hasn't happened, nowhere close, but it's good to know what's going on with your bike and with your tires and all that good stuff. So I'm a huge fan of it. I'm a big proponent of the infotainment system. Knowledge is power. And so I like it. And I do think that most touring guys that go out and do these touring trips and things, they're looking for modern technology. And I think the preference is more in having the right equipment and tech out on the road, as opposed to maintaining the most classic style possible.
Yeah, and I mean, an analog gauge isn't what makes a Harley-Davidson, and a Harley-Davidson's going to mean different things to different people, and if you like the older style stuff, then cool, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think there's a lot of charm and history that is worth celebrating for older Harley-Davidsons.
Yeah, well, and I think in our style video, we went over a couple Harleys that we feel like either should come back and play into that classic styling, and there's a few other Harley-Davidsons like Heritage and Street Bob that we feel like should lean into that classic style even more.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, we're not advocating for all the bikes to suddenly, turn into Hondas or something like that. So,
I kind of think about it like cars too. Like the more modern cars get, the more it makes sense that some of those creature comforts also come on the touring bikes, and that doesn't really bother me. Like I'm not kind of pushing back on that. For me, it's more so that I like what I like, and that you come out with a different design, and I'm like, not yet, and then it takes my brain a little while to get used to the new stuff. But,
yeah. Well, I don't think you're abnormal from most of Harley riders out there.
Yeah,
it's pretty typical opinion. Yeah. Actually, let's talk a little bit about weight as well. One of the things when the Street Glide was redesigned last year in the 24 model year was the weight savings. So we saw, various parts going to aluminum. They went to aluminum triple tree, saved quite a bit of weight there. And, they shaved, I want to say, about 25 pounds off the Street Glide. And you notice that. You notice that just picking the bike up off the kickstand, pushing it around the parking lot. I noticed little things like that. course, you and I are sitting on these things and moving them around almost daily, so our muscle memory on the weight is pretty keen on this stuff. But they did reduce the weight, which I think is big for a lot of people, because a lot of people are, intimidated by these huge, heavy touring motorcycles. So that was pretty nice.
Here I go bringing up the Road Glide, but the Street Glide comes in lighter than the Road Glide as well.
By a little bit,
the
yeah.
Street Glide's 811 pounds, I think, and the Road Glide is 830 something, 838 or something like that. It's a significant amount difference.
Yeah. Hey, and every little pound counts. I mean, a lot of people are spending thousands of dollars on carbon fiber, where they might shave 10, 15, 20 pounds.
Yep, it adds up.
Yeah, it adds up quick. So let's talk about pricing real quick, because I know pricing is a big criteria when you're trying to decide if this bike is right for you. So last year, in the 24 model year, when these bikes were first introduced, Harley-Davidson really cut the price very aggressively, and not many people were talking about it. People were still complaining about how expensive Harleys were. And Harley basically whacked these things between $2,000 and $3,000, depending on what bike you were comparing them to. I mean, in really comparable models with like equipment on them, like the Special and the ST, it was between $2,000 and $3,000 less. They came in at $25,999, so basically $26,000. And this year they did bump the bikes, so you saw about $1,750 bump. The base price comes in at $27,749, so you're looking at $1,750 bump this year. So if you want to get that base price, you're talking about a billiard gray one with chrome trim. Yes, the black trim does cost more. It's $1,350 for the black trim. Billiard gray is the base color, as we've seen now for, I want to say, 3 years or so. If you want to bump it up to a different color other than, the Mystic Shift or one of these custom colors, you're looking at $850 there. Black is $650. A color like the Mystic Shift, or the bike that we rode today, which is the Midnight Firestorm. Midnight Firestorm is how much on that? On
$2,900, I think.
$2,900. That sounds right.
I think $2,200 on Mystic Shift, $2,900 on the factory customs.
Perfect. Pretty cool that Harley-Davidson did introduce more like a higher tier custom paint job this year. That Midnight Firestorm reminds me of, I think it was a 2016 CVO Street Glide. Some of you guys may remember that metallic black with like the ghost flames over it. This, to me, looks very similar to that. And that's the bike we rode today.
I love flames.
Yeah. Never go out of style, right?
Never. The Special in 2023, Street Glide Special, was $27,999. Plus RDRS was $1,100, and if you're talking about the ST MSRP was $29,999, plus RDRS was $1,100. You know what I mean? So
we're still less than those bikes, even with the $1,750 jump this year.
Yeah, not to justify a price increase. Like if you don't like the price increase, that's okay.
Yeah.
But they, the online rhetoric is, they just keep going up and up and up and up in price, and the fact was that they had actually gone down in price, but.
Yeah.
I feel like we've talked about that quite a bit. But
yeah. If you're just coming into the Harley world, though, sometimes we like to readdress these topics.
Yeah.
You got your pricing. You're depending on, what color you pick and what engine trim you pick. You're basically between $27,750 and close to $30,000, if you go with one of these Midnight Firestorms in black trim. So yeah, you're still just under 30 grand basically on a Street Glide. Now, a lot of people still ask me today that come into the dealership, so they say, okay, where's the Special or where's the ST? I think people have become very accustomed since the 2014 model year when the Special came out to ask for the different trim levels. We just have the one trim level in the 25 model year, so it's just an FLHX. There's no Special or ST. I think it was good that Harley-Davidson kind of reset all that stuff and just came out with kind of a bigger and better model than any of those trim levels of the past, and made it now the new benchmark and the baseline. Where Harley's going to go from here, if they're going to come out with additional trim levels on the Street Glide and the Road Glide, we don't know. That'll be interesting to see what they do in the future.
Yeah, a lot of people in our demographic are asking for the stretch bags. Are they going to come out with stretch bags? So I think that that's a good thing for them to be able to expand upon in the future. The other thing that I miss about the Special and the ST was the painted interfering. I thought that's really, a big one. Really elevated. The grills. Yeah, with the grills, the nicer grills and a painted interfering. Because you look at the CVOs, we have CVOs right next to standard models, whether it's Road Glide or Street Glide, and it really elevates that fit and finish of when you're sitting on the bike and looking at the cockpit of the bike, and you have this beautiful screen with such detail, you know what I mean? Like everything looks in such high res, and then right around it is just kind of like a matte ABS plastic kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
that's something that I would like to see them do in the future, is just paint those interfairings,
That's the biggest fit and finish item that I think I complained about last year, was exactly what you said. And the speaker grills, they're just plastic speaker grills as well.
Yeah.
And for an area of the bike that you're constantly looking at, to have what, in my opinion, looks like just kind of a standard non-premium motorcycle look and finish, to have it right there in the cockpit, it kind of is a little bit of an eyesore. So maybe we'll see painted interfairings in the future. Maybe we'll see more of a metal grill that makes it, because I don't think it's going to cost Harley that much more, and it's not going to weigh that much more. So I think that
I liked that about the Special, is that it started to feel more premium, because the FLHX of old and the Electric Glide standard, they had that. There was no paint on the interfering, and then once you got to the Special, even as early as 15, 16, they had painted interfairings. And on the Road Glide, the Rushmore Road Glide, there was a couple of years that they painted that top piece right under the windshield, and then they stopped painting that. That bothered me on my bike. I actually got a painted one on there because I thought it looked so much better. So that's a big thing for me. If they do bring a Special back, I hope that they paint that.
So you like the product differentiation, like still keep on the standard Street Glide, keep the non-painted parts to kind of differentiate and give it more value if you go up a tier?
I think so. I think the more options you give the customer, the more tailored experience that the customer can have. We kind of touched on this with, the Softail line, only 6 models in the Softail line, and whether, we want them to delete models or just add additional models. Should they go up to 9 Softails? And it's nice to have variety. So I really, that's when I came into the industry, is I had to learn, there were 6, 7 Road Glide models. You had the Road Glide Standard, the Special, the ST, the Limited, the CVO Road Glide, the CVO Road Glide Limited. There was so many models that I had to learn when I was first coming into this industry. And now it's just, there's 3 Road Glides. That's it.
I think there's a fine line.
Yeah.
I think when it gets to be too many for just the average consumer to come in and really figure out what bike is best for them.
Yeah.
You either have to come to Laidlaw's, where these guys can really help you out, or you're just kind of...
No, but that was the thing. That's a valid point, because a lot of people get analysis paralysis. It's like, well, what's the difference between all these bikes? And then you start rattling off all the differences, and it's like, oh, this is just information overload.
Especially when it's like little things like, okay, the Special has a glossy interfering, and it has stretched bags, and you have the option of getting it in black.
Yeah, and the 114 instead of the 107, and then, it's a rabbit hole. So, I don't know. I see it both ways. I like for customers to have options. And if you want to save a little bit of money and you don't care about the interfering being painted or not, then that's a cool option to have. But I would like to see stretch bags, because in our demographic, a lot of people miss the stretch bags.
Yeah, I agree with that. That would be nice.
I don't know if it's still just the Street Glide, and maybe that's an option, just like black trim versus chrome is an option. We don't have as many options as we used to have. There used to be a lot more optional features on all the different models. Premium radio. ABS was an optional feature for a while. Now it's just color is the only option.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it's almost like a lot of these, what used to be options, are now standard equipment on a lot of these bikes. Yeah. So it's kind of like, okay, what could Harley come out with that is like this next level option or configuration on the bike? A lot of times that's motor, but these 117s, it's kind of like, okay, we always talk about this every year. It's kind of like, where's the ceiling?
Yeah.
Harley has, 121 in the CVO, and they have a 131 on the CVO RR, and they have a 135 crate motor. So riding the 117 around, I can't stress this enough, like, they're really good power. If you go back 15, 20 years ago, it was very common for everybody to want to do motor work, because the Twin Cam 88, for example, and even like those 80 cubic inch Evos, they were underpowered. When you got them out on the open road and the speed limit's 80 miles an hour, they were underpowered.
Yep.
These bikes now, you can get on an incline, passing a big semi truck, whatever, with your buddies, and you're doing 80, 85, 90 up a steep incline, no problem, out on the open road with someone on the back of your bike.
Absolutely.
So, don't get me wrong. People always want to go faster no matter how fast you go, and I'm glad that there are upgrade options for Harley-Davidsons, but I just feel like less people feel the need to upgrade their speed now when compared to 15 years ago, when these things are arguably, underpowered.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a big supporter of, like, if you want to build out a badass bike and you want to have tons of power, like, I'm very supportive of that. I think it's really cool. And I like the race bikes. They're like, these guys are going 186, 187 miles an hour around the track. Like, that's fun. I'm not dogging that at all.
No.
But
and performance is very in right now.
Oh yeah, and it's fun, dude.
Yeah.
Like performance is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But for the average rider, like, do I really need it? No. Like if I have like money to burn, then sure, I'll throw it at the motor and, you know, have a little more pep in my step. But at the end of the day, when it comes to value for, you know, the value proposition of where I'm putting my money, nowadays the motor isn't it, you know. And now it's more ergonomics, it's style, and, you know, lighting make my ride more enjoyable for myself rather than, you know, dumping money into power, because it's never enough. You're going to get used to everything.
True.
No matter how much power you have, you're going to get used to it. It's going to become normal if you ride it every day, and then you're going to want more, you're going to want more, you're going to want more.
Yeah, no, I agree. So we've covered engine, we've covered electronics. Both things have been definitely improved. We've covered suspension on the bikes. We covered the body style a little bit, but, you know, everything on the bike is new in terms of body style, including bags and fairing and the fuel tank and everything is all new. They shave weight in the fuel tank as well, which is another thing that, you know, helps reduce the overall weight. I think the rear fender is the only thing that's the same shape as it was when you compare it to the Rushmore models. Wind protection on the fairing, I think both fairings actually, namely the Street Glide, we're talking about the Street Glide, has been improved. Harley-Davidson does a lot of testing, you know, with their fairings and how it acts in the wind at high speeds. They do a lot of stuff with their computational fluid dynamic type stuff. These fairings at 80 miles an hour plus, you know, it creates this nice wind isolation bubble where you don't have the weird buffeting and things. I just got a comment actually the other day on the Heritage video we did last week, where this guy was talking about how the windshield on the Heritage gave him this buffeting.
Yeah.
And I think that can be fixed by lowering the windshield a little bit, or maybe a different helmet, or putting earplugs in or whatever. There's things you can do, but having that fairing up front with the perfect venting on it and everything with the proper windshield size, it's such a comfortable experience at high speeds when you're really in some aggressive wind situations out of the road. I mean, on the freeway, you're doing, you know, 70, 80 miles an hour with the wind blasting at you, and then you add wind to that. Maybe it's a windy day or something like that. Like these fairings perform really well, and I think the Street Glide especially does really well.
Yeah, I'm reminded every time we jump on the freeway with bikes that don't have a fairing.
Oh my gosh, it's like pushing.
Dude, they'll kick your butt, dude. Like the fairings does such a good job. I think the Street Glide fairing, since it's a little bit closer to me, for me personally, I think it does a better job at like blocking the wind off my body. Where I feel like my Road Glide fairing lets a lot of air in underneath, you know. So it does a little bit better like up here. The Road Glide does, but the Street Glide does really well. Like I feel nothing on my chest. You know, that feeling of long days when you're in the wind and, you know, you're using your core to fight the wind and hold your body up. You don't need that on the Street Glide because it does such a good job of breaking the wind off your body.
Interesting, yeah. It's funny you mentioned that, Mickey, because I almost feel like my Road Glide does better with the body wind, and maybe it's just because I have the different generation of fairing than you do.
Yeah.
But I think the new 24 plus Road Glide fairings do better with the body wind, and the Street Glides do better with the headwind.
Interesting.
That's what I feel.
Yeah.
But either way, they both do really good. A lot of times people will ask me, you know, which one performs better in the wind, and we cover that in the video that I mentioned earlier. But they perform differently, both of them, the Road Glide and the Street Glide, and they're both very, very good. I think the top speed of the Street Glide is 110 miles an hour, where it's electronically governed. I think the Road Glide is like 115 or something like that.
115, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like 5 miles per hour faster on the Road Glide.
I hit mine at 111, 110, 111, and then the governor hits in.
Yeah.
On my 23 Road Glide ST, so we shouldn't be riding fast anymore.
Yeah, I mean, once you get above 100 miles an hour, you know, it's like, okay, how long can you really maintain that speed? You know,
I was trying to catch up to Brandon. We were leaving work, and he just took off like a bat out of hell, and I was trying to catch up to him.
I'm not here to report you, Mickey. Okay, that's perfectly fine what you do. It's totally fine.
But you're right. For an extended amount of time, that was me just like trying to catch up with my buddy. That wasn't like, I'm not sustaining 111 miles an hour like for hours or something like that, you know?
Yeah. So, I mean, for those of you out there, I mean, there's sometimes people that critique the top speed and where it's governed and everything, and I get it, but it's like, if you're looking to really do 150 miles an hour plus, like, get a sport bike. Don't get a fair Harley Davidson.
Yeah, that's true. I agree. None of us should be going that fast.
Yeah. So anyways, guys, I thought we would end with kind of our final thoughts. I know a lot of times people watch these videos to either reinforce the decision they've already made or to help them decide which direction to go in as far as bike goes. We've done a lot of videos in the past really comparing like the touring capable softails with the touring bikes. I'm going to link another video in the top right hand corner. This is going to be like a new record for videos I'm going to link in this video because I'm referencing so many videos. But
well, you've done a lot of videos. So.
We have, yeah. But we cover a lot of topics more in depth than I'm going to be able to in this topic. But if you've decided you want a touring bike and you've decided you're going to go on trips and be on the freeway for more than half of the time or so, I really recommend a faired touring bike, whether it be a Street Glide or a Road Glide or something like that. The Street Glides have never been better. They're lighter. They have less heat coming off of them. They have more power. The infotainment system is way better. It's bigger, more customizable. You got more functionality with Apple CarPlay and different, widgets, readings, temperatures, this, that. And so they really are a huge improvement when you compare them to the Rushmore bikes. I would say ride them both and feel them both. There's other factors that play in, like what kind of bars you're going to get. You have a couple different limitations when it comes to the Street Glide when compared to the Road Glide. And also, what style do you like? The Street Glide definitely has that more classic batwing silhouette that can be traced all the way back to 1969 when Harley-Davidson first did it on the Electric Glide. And so if you want something that has a longer history and has its roots dating further back than the Road Glide fairing, then maybe go with the Street Glide. I know there's just some guys that just like the Street Glide fairing better. For me, for years, I was someone that always liked the Street Glide fairing better. And so I rode them for about 10 years. And sometimes I just like the smaller footprint of the batwing fairing as well. With the Road Glide, you just feel like you have more material, more surface area of fairing up front, and it just makes everything feel like larger. At the end of the day, though, the Road Glide is only a little bit heavier than the Street Glide, so I think a lot of it is just optical. But at the end of the day, they're both going to perform very comparably. There's small little differences between the Road Glide and the Street Glide. Again, watch the video that I linked in this video to help you decide. But overall, the Street Glide, it's just a good all-around vehicle. Both the Road Glide and the Street Glide are good all-around vehicles where you can still use them as a local, ripper, but if you're gonna go out on a long road trip, a few little things like a seat, maybe a tour pack, and a windshield, you've got the big elements that really make it like an Ultra or a Limited or something like that. So very versatile bike. Take them on long road trips or just do local stuff. They're great freeway eaters. I mean, they just eat up the freeway miles. Again, you have access to all these different aftermarket parts that so many people make for these bikes. Even with the body style change, there's not too many parts that have really changed that much. I mean, the seat fitment has changed, some like the grips and things like that. Fitment has changed. The windshields obviously have changed, but a lot of the still same, case covers and, footboards and things like that are the same. And so you have basically a bike that can have really your customization options are limitless.
Yeah, if you're validating your own purchase and you own a Street Glide, I hope you love it because it's a fantastic bike. If you're trying to decide between the two, you got to ride them. You got to ride them. It happens so often where people will compare two bikes. They'll come in, they want to test ride two bikes. So I'll come with them, I'll ride one, they ride the other. We'll go, a few miles down the road and then we'll switch and we'll pull out of a parking lot. And by the time we get to the next light, 9 out of 10 guys, it's one of two things. It's either give me that bike back or this is the one. And there's really no rhyme or reason to it. It's not like 9 out of 10 times it's Road Glide over Lowrider ST or anything like that. It's just a vibe thing. And sometimes you vibe with a bike and sometimes you don't. So we can look at the specs and, I'm sure you're watching videos on YouTube about different kinds of motorcycles. But if you don't ride them, you don't really know. And that's really where the proof is you got to ride the bike, take it out. If, a test ride isn't enough for you, go rent one. Ride it for a whole day. Sit on it for 8, 10, 12 hours and you'll really know where you want to put your money.
Right on, guys. Well, thank you for watching. And if you're looking for a new or used Harley-Davidson in Southern California, make sure you check us out here at Laidlaw's Harley-Davidson, where we have absolutely no added dealer markup, no dealer fees, no prep, none of that BS. We'd love to help you out. And if you have any questions, like always, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I try to get back to everybody. And if you're traveling from out of state, come see us, come say hi, check it out. We'll wrap for a little bit. Anyways, we'll see you guys on the next one. Make sure you hit that subscribe button to keep up with all of the Harley-Davidson content we show on this channel. We'll see you guys on the next one. Later.